Today's show. 60 years of climate change warnings, the signs that were missed and ignored. JP Morgan and Goldman call time on work from home. Their rivals are ready to pounce. Asset owners managing $6 trillion call for a global climate price. New United States rules to protect animal farmers are expected this week. Republicans weigh cracking cities to doom Democrats. TikTok is taking the book industry by storm, and retailers are taking notice. Suez Canal says a deal has been reached to free the seized vessel. Bank of Japan launches a new scheme for fighting climate change and keeps policy steady. LiDAR is the future of autonomous driving. This company is making it cheaper and better. Debunking common myths about Julian Assange. Echoes of 1989 as foreign forces withdraw from Afghanistan. More than 1 billion seashore animals have been cooked to death in a British Columbia hot wave. San Marino adapts NFT vaccine passports. What we've learned after 1 month of operating a hybrid office. Almonds swept California farms, then the water ran out. The council implementing New York's climate law is stacked with industry executives. The power is on for now. Modernizing the electric grid delivers efficiencies but opens up security challenges. Passenger rail is not dead yet. Capitol Hill grudgingly funds Amtrak, and now the rail operator may have to compete with private sector companies for federal dollars. When the institution doesn't trust itself, Democrats are struggling for a path forward on a popular infrastructure package because nobody in the party believes one another. The post-COVID healthcare system is out of control. After gouging Americans for record pandemic profits, the healthcare industry sets its sights on even more. I always spelled desalination wrong. Thank you. When the Pentagon visits Silicon Valley, inside a senior Defense Department official's meetings with Apple, Google, and defense tech companies. How the GameStop hustle worked, how hedge funds and brokers have manipulated the market. All of these stories are from the American Prospect, founded by David Dane. Nature is screaming to prioritize climate. Events in South Florida and the Pacific Northwest demonstrate that the climate crisis is on our shores now. Fossil fuel-funded think tank takes Tonko to coal country, congressional exchanges that overlook the climate crisis. Former corporate lawyer is set to lead Army Corps of Engineers as the planet sizzles. Michael Connor of Vilmerhale has been appointed to run a surprisingly important agency in efforts to mitigate the climate crisis. Cleaning up electricity. A federal energy efficiency and clean electricity standard is doable, but getting one through Congress will not be easy. Biden's promising, problematic plan to plug orphaned oil and gas wells. The proposed infrastructure package devotes $16 billion to cleaning up abandoned fossil fuel development, but it may serve as a bailout for irresponsible oil companies. Corporate merger aims to build a water privatization giant. Veolia and Suez plan a $15.4 billion deal that would create the largest private water firm in the world. Juul is taking academic corruption to a new level. The e-cigarette company bought an entire issue of a scholarly journal with all the articles written by authors on its payroll to prove that its product has a public benefit. The Supreme Court's inadequate recusal policy. Justice Amy Coney Barrett declined to recuse herself in a case involving a nonprofit that spent over $1 million getting her confirmed to the Supreme Court. Here are 4 reasons the West is headed for a very drastic crisis, according to a veteran economist. Oh, come on, I want to read this. Crystal meth in waterways is turning trout into drug addicts. That is an actual article. I'm as surprised as you are. Opinion, what the stock market's Black Swan Index hitting an all-time high tells us. The SIBO's Skew Index shows that disagreement among investors is particularly wide right now. Pfizer vaccine protection against infection declines to 64% in Israel. I really have to dig deeply into this one. Please don't quote me on this story until we do some reading. I don't want to put out misinformation. I don't want to be incorrect on something that is so vitally important. So we will look into how exactly they're defining those percentages. Apple is reportedly about to make a huge acquisition that no one expected. Sun Valley's airport is so overrun with private jets arriving for summer camp for billionaires that FAA had to delay incoming planes. The sea is changing so much, climate change and lives of Mumbai's fishermen. Taliban fighters storm capital of northwestern Afghan province. Ohio makes it 6 states sending military and police to respond to the Biden border crisis. Interesting framing. The Biden border crisis. Interesting frame. Dowlin, North Dakota rancher deals with burnt-up pastures and low or empty water holes. Leaked EU plan to green its timber industry sparks a firestorm. The wrong way to pay for infrastructure from Barron's. This will be interesting to look into. Representative Mo Brooks on the incendiary January 6th speech, "Trump made me do it," he says. The Senate candidate told the MAGA faithful before the insurrection to start taking down names and kicking ass. Research aims to examine compounding health effects of climate change. Agrify enters into a multi-year vertical farming research and development partnership with Curaleaf. The auto industry is distancing itself from Tesla in response to new crash reporting rule. Chinese banks tell staff to recruit up to 300 new digital yuan users each. Shell prepares to raise shareholder payouts. Binance CEO says compliance is a journey as the world's largest crypto exchange faces a growing crackdown. The NOAA updates its 30-year climate normals, and yeah, it tracks. Class action lawsuit against Binance targets exchange's futures trading. AeroFarms talks research and development in the United Arab Emirates for vertical farming. Lumber is down a whopping 40%, but still at historic highs, an expert weighs in. A nanofiber membrane could help solve the water drinking crisis. Chinese millennials are giving up the rat race to lie flat. Vertical farms nailed tiny salads, now they need to feed the world. Is the IMF repeating its mistakes from the global financial crisis? A farm in the Poconos is the first to achieve regenerate. We're going to have to find the story. But there's a farm in the Poconos that's doing something with hemp and capturing carbon and doing a good job. And animals are shrinking, blame climate change. Hello, I am Brad, and that is what I have opened to discuss in today's news. Jovenel Moïse was assassinated in Haiti. I am very uninformed and ill-informed about Caribbean or Global South news and politics. It's not a story that I really know nearly enough about to cover. I know there will be a lot of people that are covering it, and I thank them for it. I'm not informed enough. It's going to be impossible for me to get informed quickly enough to provide any kind of legitimate analysis. And welcome to today's show. As some of the first viewers in the channel, Carpe Pax and or Biohaz, if anybody has stories they would like to begin with, you are welcome to request them. Otherwise, I think we will begin. Yeah, now I have a little bit of time to actually do like the pre-show work. So I've been kind of getting my tabs in order and just being more organized. 60 years of climate change warnings, the signs that were missed. The next important thing that I am going to be doing on the channel, I was hoping to maybe get to it today. We'll see if we can get through all these. It's 60, not that bad. We are going to be developing 25 ecological catastrophes and at a minimum 25 potential solutions. Let's start with some of the American Prospect. I have been told by many people that the American Prospect is an excellent publication that I should read more often. I've read some of David Dayen's work. I'm a big fan of what they're trying to do. I just don't know this entity well enough, so let's begin. The council implementing New York's climate law is stacked with industry executives. In 2019, when New York passed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, they cheered as a path-breaking carbon reduction law. It charged advisory panels with issuing recommendations to cut greenhouse gas emissions across 6 sectors: agriculture, buildings, heavy industry, power generation, transportation, and waste. 2 years later, the panels have produced their recommendations to the 22-member Climate Action Group. But only 2 of the panels are poised to achieve that requirement. By their own estimates, the other panel's proposals would leave their sectors significantly short. Transportation and waste sector recommendations would each cut emissions less than 18%. Agriculture actually expects its emissions to rise in the next decade. The claim is that the advisory groups that just sent over their recommendations are stacked with numerous industry representatives. So is the Climate Action Council that received them. 14 of the 22 council members were appointed by Governor Andrew Cuomo, either directly to the panel or indirectly as heads of state agencies. 2 of the remaining 8 members appointed by legislative leadership are industry executives. Left-wing Greens say that since tailpipe emissions are regulated at the federal level, limiting the state's regulatory options, New York should directly pay for the transition by taxing the rich or polluters, to subsidize the purchase of electric cars and trucks, or perhaps a cash for clunkers stimulus program. This is one that I've never really known about. We would have to look at each vehicle and look at the amount of energy that was put into building the vehicle, how much pollution it would cause to its end lifetime versus replacing it with an EV. I guess in some instances, yeah, it's probably going to be better, but I would want to know on a case-by-case basis. The requirement for New York to cut 40% of emissions by 2030 is economy-wide. It doesn't need to come from a particular sector, they claim. Electrifying transit is a heck of a lot easier than decarbonizing buildings. Is it? We've got a problem that skyscrapers are just so inefficient. They heat up like crazy during the daytime. They get cold in the evening. Sorry, I need to also stop saying crazy. They heat up and cool. They heat up and cool. They heat up and cool. Buildings, which are the top source of pollution in New York, well, there you go. That's why, because it's because all that air conditioning that they're using and all the heating that they're using, are proposing to cut around 27% of emissions by 2030. they could not come up with a mix of regulations and incentives to retrofit some of the oldest building stock in the nation that would meet the 40% emissions reduction requirement. Oh, interesting. They're proposing a ban on fossil fuel energy sources in new building construction to be enacted in single-family homes by 2025 and multifamily and commercial buildings by 2030. Why wouldn't you go commercial and multifamily first? Why hit single-family homes that it's going to be more expensive for them? San Jose has mandated all electric new construction starting August of 2021. Wow, 2 months away. Joining more than 40 California cities phasing out gas. By contrast, building all electric homes is already cost competitive in much of the country, they say. Gas utilities link natural gas to social justice by reasoning that renewables are unaffordable. That was once true, but improved technology subsidies in the pandemic, which curbed global energy demand and spurred investments in renewables, has driven falling costs in wind and solar. I don't think that it curbed global energy demand. I think it paused it. Welcome into the show, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. The power is on for now. Modernizing the electric grid delivers efficiencies but opens up security challenges. 7-minute article. The COVID-19 crisis cratered the American economy in a few months, but a coordinated assault on the electric grid could do great damage in a week or less. President Biden proposed $100 billion in electric transmission system upgrades, but in the first round of negotiations, Republicans showed up with $0 for the grid. Three major grids deliver electricity to the lower 48 states, two of them known as interconnections. The Eastern Interconnection delivers power to the eastern states south to Florida, a section of northern Texas, and west all the way to the Rockies. The Western grid serves the states on the other side of the Rockies, British Columbia and Alberta. Texas has ERCOT, a self-contained grid for most of the state. Texas officials segregated the system from the other two to avoid federal regulation, a decision that prevented Texas from securing additional power during the February deep freeze that paralyzed most of the state. The average age of power transformers is 25 years. For transmission lines, it's over 30. Electric generation modernization programs demand major adaptations, such as new transmission pathways to accommodate renewable generation. Permitting these lines can take 2 to 3 years and be undone by community objections and other obstacles, but they're essential to getting renewable energy plants online. Another focus of modernization is storage for intermittent sun and wind energy. To keep power flowing throughout the day, regardless of the weather, it's critical to be able to maintain reserves when it's cloudy, dark, or still. One person from the MIT Sloan School of Management, a director of cybersecurity, stated, "You have an irreversible trend to connecting more things to the internet. Then you have people recommending that the energy systems be disconnected from the internet. Even air gaps, disconnecting systems from the internet, do not offer complete security." Madnick notes that computers hit by the 2010 Stuxnet malware attack on Iran's nuclear program were not connected to the internet. The Colonial Pipeline attack is the up our game moment. Unlike investor-owned electric utilities, which must share information about attacks, oil and gas companies are not subject to federal sharing protocols that cover cyber intrusions. Passenger rail is not dead yet. Capitol Hill grudgingly funds Amtrak, and now the rail operator may have to compete with private sector companies for federal dollars. Thank you very much yesterday, Biohaz. You don't understand the amount of saving that did for me. I'm in between converting from Fulton Bank to PNC Bank, and the Zelle payment was supposed to be instantaneous, but now they're saying it's going to take like 3 business days for me to transfer my money from one bank account to the other. So you were a savior. I wish I could just hop on a train and see what it's like. Either hopping on one that's kind of just like moving materials, or even hop on an Amtrak. Yes, they are. It's not news that Amtrak, a quasi-public entity, depends on government subsidies. American train enthusiasts salivate over Western European rail, where subsidies for public transportation are higher because taxes are and people pay them, which is why Western Europeans have great train service and Americans do not. But in some American cities, rail is prized. Does anybody out there have a number of... I'd be interested to see some information about the ownership of rail lines in, I'm just going to pick 2 like big Western European nations, France and Germany. I'd be very curious to see, does the government own the lines? Do private companies own the lines? Are there multiple private companies that own the lines? Is it public-private? But I would be I'd be very, very curious to see what the ownership is of the EU rail systems. In some American cities, rail is prized, despite the assumption that neither cities nor mass transit were supposed to survive the pandemic. Short hops that do not involve navigating stop-and-go traffic or merit flying are sparking plenty of interest from travelers interested in sustainability and staying off the roads. Amtrak ridership currently is more than 50% of pre-pandemic levels. The dream of high-speed rail remains elusive, undone by the implosion of California's ambitious high-speed rail plan, which set the national debate about train travel back years. Republicans work overtime to introduce or maintain stops in rural locales where Amtrak is public transportation disguised as scenic, long-distance travel trips for vacationers. That's good enough to preserve Amtrak as a nationwide service, but barely. Amtrak gets showered with positive media attention thanks to the presidency of frequent rider and rail booster Biden. But the Fight Club that passes for the world's greatest deliberative body continues to drag the United States transportation networks into developing nation status. Biden originally put $80 billion into passenger rail, now is reduced to $66 billion and split with freight rail no less. Biden has specifically said that a second bill in reconciliation wouldn't increase these numbers for the projects in the bipartisan package, so Amtrak's cut has more than halved already. Amtrak is pressing ahead with its 15-year plan that opens up new rail lines and expands existing ones. If any of the logical proposals materialize, it'll be the closest that the United States may come to accelerated, if not high-speed travel in major urban corridors. Between Chicago and Minneapolis, adding a second train daily on an existing Amtrak route would provide nearly $3 million in annual economic benefits and serve nearly 125,000 people who might otherwise drive. Hang on a minute. How can it only be $3 million in annual economic benefits? I don't understand this. Is it that hard to add a second train daily to an existing route? What are you talking about? Oh God. Microsoft is partnering with Oregon, Washington State, and British Columbia to explore building a new high-speed rail line along the Interstate 5 corridor between Portland and Vancouver. A proposal for a new route between LA and Vegas pits Amtrak against Brightline, a private passenger rail company that's seen success in Florida on the Miami-Fort Lauderdale-West Palm Beach route. Not only is Amtrak hostage to the whims of congressional appropriations, private companies are eager to dip into the federal pot. Brightline intends to compete for federal grants. The House version of the $547 billion surface transportation bill would allocate $25 billion for high-speed rail projects, but it includes a provision that would enable private companies to apply for that money. Brightline has 9 lobbyists in Washington. A plan to build a northeast maglev train between Baltimore and Washington careened to a halt after Baltimore transportation and planning officials opposed the HSR line that would provide a 15-minute trip between Baltimore and Washington and eventually 1 hour to New York, citing equity, environmental justice, and community impacts, as well as incompatibility with current infrastructure improvements like replacing B&P Tunnel. The projected cost of a $60 one-way ticket raised the questions about who would be riding the trains. On Thursday, a bipartisan group of Congress called on their leadership to carve out multi-billions for dedicated high-speed rail. Representative Seth Moulton, Democrat of Massachusetts, is the leader of the chaotic quest to dedicate new federal monies to high-speed rail development. In part through public-private partnerships, his American High-Speed Rail White Paper. It's actually a pretty in-depth white paper. Is an impressive analysis of the challenges and benefits that reasonable people can support, though it barely tackles the consequences for Amtrak. Seven railways are operated fully or partly by the French state railway SNCF. Out of the roughly 30 UK railways, only 6 are fully owned and operated by private companies or British government authorities. When, however, federally owned railway undertakings are but 2018 is close enough. Yeah, I don't really need to get like hugely accurate data. I'm just going to assume that there's been more privatization since then, so whatever these numbers are, I'm going to bump them up about 6%. When, however, federally owned railway undertakings are disregarded, it is apparent that the remaining competition in the short-distance passenger rail segment is divided between three groups of owners: Germany's federal, states, and local authorities, 29%, privately owned 23%, subsidiaries of foreign state-owned railways, 48%. Interesting. Almost all British train lines are now owned by other EU countries. Sounds like they're doing what the United States did. Is this true? Since the UK railways were privatised in 1997, Virgin Rail has been running the country's West Coast main line connecting London, Birmingham, Manchester, and Glasgow. This week, the train line passed to a consortium of the UK First Group and Italian state rail operator Trenitalia. The line is among the most lucrative and important in the country, and first Trenitalia reportedly outbid a rival Chinese consortium with an offer of $1.9 billion in premiums to run the line until 2026, followed by a second phase of payments until 2034. German state railway Deutsche Bahn operates 4 British railways, including the London Overground and the Grand Central Line to Sunderland. 7 are operated or partly owned by Dutch state railway Nederlandse Spoorwegen, including Merseyrail, it's probably Merseyside Derby, Merseyrail, ScotRail, and the West Midlands Railway. 7 railways are operated fully or partly by French state railway SNCF, including Transport for Wales and the Thameslink. Yeah, I guess I do have to give a little bit of an apology to the international audience that the news has been quite US centric at the moment. It's not that I'm forgetting about the international viewers, countries, and friends out there. Damn, my hair looks dark as shit today. But I've been needing to do energy, food, transportation, electric grid, these kind of conversations for a while, so thank you, international audience. Rail ticket prices in the UK have risen significantly and are now among the most expensive in the world. The success of privatization is a hotly debated topic. Standard single fares have increased by up to 208% since privatization, but at the same time the price of advanced tickets has decreased in real terms, and their availability has reduced the number of people traveling at peak times. Though complaining about the UK's rail service is something of a national obsession, defenders of privatization point to customer satisfaction surveys. I mean, for every one survey, you can find one in the opposite. Don't you have Twitter? Alright, thank you for that info, Lucas. I don't exactly want to read that one. I do want to read this one. The post-COVID healthcare system is out of control. After gouging Americans for record pandemic profits, the healthcare industry sets its sights on even more. Less utilization and fewer claims became a financial windfall for insurers basically without precedent, as they reaped sky-high premiums without having to provide much in the way of actual healthcare. For 2020, insurance giant Humana reported a profit, everybody, not revenue, a profit of $4.6 billion, a 31% increase over 2019 numbers. Cigna notched $8.5 billion in profits, up 67% year over year. And United Group, the company's largest insurer, reported a stunning $15.4 billion after having a record profit $13.8 billion in 2019. Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson benefited greatly from vaccine development. According to GoodRx, 857 of the most popular brand name and generic drugs saw their prices increase by an average of 6.8% from January 1st to June 30th, 2020, with another 67 drugs getting an additional price hike of over 3%. Sorry. Last week, the FDA approved a new Alzheimer's drug called Aduhelm from a biotech firm called Biogen. Aduhelm represents the first new major Alzheimer's drug in almost 20 years, which may sound promising, it would be, but for the fact that experts say that despite the FDA's approval, there's not a lot of hard evidence that it actually works. In fact, 3 members of the advisory board who voted against approval resigned from the panel after they were overruled and it got the thumbs up. As alarming as the dubious efficacy of Aduhelm, which could give millions of families false hope that their loved ones will be freed from dementia, is the fact that Biogen can charge whatever it wants for the drug because of notoriously lax price controls that dominate the American healthcare experience. So let's see. Well, there's their drug approval. So over one weekend, you went from, you had a 37% increase over one weekend when it got regulatory approval. Damn. And because Alzheimer's is so common, and fully 80% of the country's 6 million Alzheimer's patients are on Medicare, that single drug alone, which again might not even work, could bankrupt the entire program. If 1 million Medicare beneficiaries receive Aduhelm, which may even be the low end of Biogen's expectations, spending on it would exceed $57 billion a year, far surpassing spending on all other Medicare Part B drugs covered combined. Those sorts of decisions are not subject to congressional votes or even any public debate. And because the Biden administration has signaled repeatedly that drug pricing controls, like encouraging Medicare to more aggressively negotiate rates with the pharmaceutical companies, are of no interest, drug makers have no reason not to charge astronomical prices, even if their one product could take down the entire public health care apparatus in the country. United Health announced a new policy on emergency room visits. It will now determine retroactively whether an ER trip was necessary. If not, it will not be paying for the trip at all. Quote, claims determined to be non-emergent will be subject to no coverage or limited coverage in accordance with the member's certificate of coverage, is the new policy. Perfect. We got it. If it doesn't meet with their own standards for emergency, the patient will no longer be covered and thus will be responsible out of pocket for all costs incurred. I wonder if my emergency room visit would have been covered then. I went to the emergency room for, I thought I was dying. My heart was pumping out of my chest and I was having a really bad panic anxiety attack. I wonder if they would have counted that. Remember that under the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, anyone who shows up in an emergency room by law must be cared for and cannot be denied treatment. The existence of this program has long served as a talking point for the private healthcare industry to excuse its more egregious excesses. Sure, the line goes, millions of Americans are uninsured, and millions more can't even afford to use the insurance they have, but beneath all that cruelty and absurdity is an abiding commitment to treat people no matter what. Well, United Health doesn't want to pay for that anymore. And that refused coverage will turn up as an uncompensated care, eventually paid for by the federal government, or a flurry of bills on people who can't get their ER visit covered. And if United Health customers respond by avoiding the ER out of fear of sticker shock, it will lead to more untreated medical problems, sicknesses, and deaths. My God. Healthcare in the United States is ridiculous. It really, truly is. My God. When the Pentagon visits Silicon Valley, inside a senior Defense Department official's meetings with Apple, Google, and defense tech companies. How's everybody doing today? Is it Wednesday? I leave for Nebraska tomorrow. I'm probably going to try to drive about halfway tomorrow. Oh, whoops. To Alliance. So I'll probably try to get to Kansas City tomorrow, maybe? That seems about the midway point. Yeah, Kansas City. Eight hours and 48 minutes. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to drive 8 hours and 48 minutes in a day. Holy hell. I am not meant to be an over-the-road trucker. That is for damn sure. Inside a senior Defense Department officials, meetings with Apple, Google, and defense tech companies. Oh yeah, they were all about saying that this thing hasn't even proven that it's working. How are you doing, M4S? Good to see you. Hello, McCore, Lucas, Biohaz, others. Few people in the Biden ministry have as much personal experience with the dangers of surveillance technology as Colin Kahl. He was notoriously targeted by the spy-for-hire firm Black Cube 3 years ago. Agents gathered his personal information where his kids went to school, the make of his car, then used aliases and fake companies in an attempt to lure his wife into partnering with a black ops agent on a program at his daughter's school. Kahl had worked on the Iranian nuclear deal as a senior Obama official, was teaching at Stanford at the time. To the day, it's not clear who hired the firm to go after him. Kahl is the number 3 official in the Pentagon and oversees big-picture planning. As tech companies strengthen their relationships with Washington, leaders like Kahl have the chance to prioritize civil liberties and put in place guardrails to ensure the kind of spying that happened to him doesn't happen to others. But instead, Kahl appears to be brokering deals with the very tech companies that facilitate this activity. Kahl flew to California this month to talk to Silicon Valley representatives. He tweeted about the trip and did not disclose who he sat across the table from. In response to repeated requests from the prospect, a Defense Department spokesman said that Kahl met with dominant platform companies Apple and Google, investment groups Graph Ventures, Lux Capital, UP Partners, oh my god, he met with Palantir too. Oh my god. One of the purposes of Kahl's fact-finding trip was to facilitate close cooperation between the Pentagon and Silicon Valley companies to remain on the cutting edge of military tech for years to come. Oh God, Toomey from Pennsylvania. It's vital that discussions about society-changing technologies like artificial intelligence address civil rights protections from the very start. Didn't Tucker Carlson just come out yesterday saying he wants cameras in all classrooms to make sure people aren't teaching critical race theory? Nice to have the conservatives pushing the surveillance state once again. Yep, most worrisome was the meeting with Palantir. Alex Karp describes it as the software of the future today. If Palantir can do everything it reports to do, then it's on the spectrum of the film Minority Report in terms of calling mass government datasets to essentially shadow profile everyone. We've seen these same technologies such as Palantir used by the Trump administration to identify and target undocumented migrants for deportation, said Michael Kleinman, who monitors Silicon Valley for Amnesty International. We cannot rely on after-the-fact exposés about how the technology is used to protect our rights. At that point, it's often too late. Avril Haines, Director of National Intelligence, earned $180,000 in consulting fees from Palantir. My God. What was the big what was the big Palantir paper that I've read here before? I wonder if I have it in my bookmarks. Yeah, here it is. If anybody wants to do a deep dive on Palantir. It's a long article. Does Palantir See Too Much by Michael Steinberger. It's a really long article, but it's a really, really good article. I highly recommend it. Fuck Peter Thiel. Okay, let's hop out of the American Prospect because their articles are just so damn long. And we're going to start to get through some of these other ones. JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs are calling time on work from home, their rivals are ready to pounce. I was mostly just curious to see like what the lens or the slant of this article was going to be. They're claiming that culture is why they need people back. Goldman staff members returned on June 14th and were greeted with a fleet of food trucks. Mr. Solomon, the CEO, said in February that working from home is not the new normal. It's an aberration that they're going to correct as soon as possible. Leaders at both banks say being in the office leads to better collaboration and idea generation, and they complained that employees are less productive at home. Morgan Stanley CEO James Gorman said at a conference last month that he'd be very disappointed if people haven't found their way into the office by Labor Day. If you want to get paid New York rates, you work in New York. None of this I'm in Colorado and getting paid like I'm sitting in New York City. Oh, Jesus, these people are vultures. McKinsey companies showed that more than half of employers prefer hybrid work, a mixture of working remotely and heading into the office. Can anybody out there find me the Iceland study of 2,400 people that did a 4-day work week and reduced their work week down to like 35 or 36 hours, had no loss in productivity, but only had huge upticks in happiness and quality of life? Just came out pretty recently, I think. Citigroup said in March that the bulk of the workforce would go into the office about 3 days a week. Jefferies Financial Group is largely letting employees and leaders figure out what will work best from team to team. Richard Handler said that record revenue proves he doesn't need to issue an edict to bring workers back. Interesting. Asset owners managing $6 trillion call for a global carbon price. Nice. Iceland's journey to a shorter working week. From 2015 to 2019, Iceland ran 2 large-scale trials of a reduced working week of 35 to 36 hours with no reduction in pay. Analysis of the results, which included over 1% of Iceland's entire working population, suggest important lessons. Report link. The report's available here. Yeah, I mean, I remember looking through this, so I can like basically give the report answer. But the TLDR of the report was no decrease in productivity, only an increase in worker happiness. I'm sure that they're going to have a summary. Yeah, there's the executive summary. Results summarized in this report, based both on qualitative and quantitative data, demonstrate the transformative positive effects of a shorter working week for both employees and businesses. Productivity and service provision remained the same or improved across all the major trial workplaces. Worker well-being increased across a range of indicators from perceived stress and burnout to health and a work-life balance. Oh, yeah, sorry, I was, this is not related to the prior story. I do partially apologize. I was just on the, thinking about work. So this one doesn't exactly relate to the one that we were talking about. Following the trial's success, Icelandic trade unions and their confederations achieved permanent reductions in working hours for tens of thousands of their members across the country. In total, roughly 86% of Iceland's entire working population has now either moved to working shorter hours or have gained the right to shorten their working hours. These reductions were won in contracts negotiated between 2019 and 2021 and have already come into effect for most workers. Some of these contracts give shorter hours to all union members, while others stipulate that staff in their individual workplaces can negotiate shorter hours. Yeah, thank you for linking this one in. It's a really good study. So this is saying that very rich people want to back the creation of a minimum price on carbon, which would trend higher over time to give certainty to investors and provide a guardrail against price crashes and a maximum price to protect against price spikes. So they want to be able to know exactly how they can hedge their bets. I don't like when big business is calling for carbon pricing. Non-regressive and revenue-neutral carbon pricing instruments harmonized across borders will not only unleash massive investment in renewable power systems, but boost sectors from construction to transport, which are in urgent need of transformation, they say. New United States rules to protect animal farmers are expected this week. Also, by the way, once again, everybody, if you just want later and you follow me on Twitter, I am going to be giving the one tab to all the different stories that we have up here today. So if you want to be able to read these for yourselves, I think almost all of them are unpaywalled. So you'll be able to, you can grab that link from me if you want to, and then you can just kind of do the show on your own. The Biden administration plans to issue a new rule to protect the rights of farmers who raise cows, chickens, and hogs against the country's largest meat processors as part of a plan to encourage more competition in the ag sector. The new rule will make it easier for farmers to sue companies they contract with over unfair, discriminatory, or deceptive practices, in one of several steps the White House plans to announce in the next few days. I also heard that they're changing right to repair. Can anybody find me a link on United States agricultural right to repair law amendments or changes? Thank you, either way. This is a funny one. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is also expected to tighten the definition of what it means for meat to be labeled product of the USA, to exclude when animals are raised in other countries and simply processed in the United States. Currently, several court rulings have interpreted federal law as saying a farmer must prove a company's actions harm competition in the industry before a lawsuit can move forward. The new rule would ease that high burden of proof. Chicken and pork producers, for example, must often enter long-term contracts with companies like Tyson Foods and Pilgrim's Pride, but farmers allege lock them into deals that fix their compensation at unprofitably low levels and forces them deeply into debt. Previously, the major meat companies defended the contract system that calls for farmers to provide the barns and labor to raise chickens, while the companies provide chicks, feed, and expertise to help raise the birds as fair. When the previous rule was killed in 2017, the National Chicken Council trade group said it would have opened up the industry to a flood of frivolous and costly litigation. Currently, companies are allowed to use that label anytime meat is processed in the United States, even if the animals were born and raised in another country. USDA officials say that today most grass-fed beef labeled as made in America actually comes from imported cattle. Wow. Biden wants to give U.S. farmers more power in negotiating the sale of livestock. The executive order expected within days will also address such competitive issues as delayed airline baggage, cell phone company practices, and Pentagon contracts. Reuters first reported on the action on repairs earlier Tuesday in the planned executive order. The FTC wrote a report for Congress in May that discussed right to repair, addressing the limits that manufacturers put on who can repair items ranging from mobile phones to home appliances to cars. Such limits may also raise the price of those repairs. Wait, what? Some tractor manufacturers like Deere & Co., AGCO Corp., CNHI use proprietary repair tools and software to prevent third parties from performing repairs. Shares of the companies fell. Oh, yeah. No. I thought that they meant that repealing the right to repair laws or repealing the current set of it would lead to higher prices. I thought that they were trying to say that, like, getting rid of it. Yeah, I confused myself there. Okay, we are 1 hour into the show. I am going to take a very quick stretch break. So I encourage anybody who's been sitting there for an hour, get up, walk around yourself, and I will be right back. Republicans weigh cracking cities to doom Democrats. GOP officials from D.C. and the United States, and the states, are debating how aggressively to break up red state cities to maximize the party's advantage in redistricting. From Ali Mutnik yesterday. 2 days ago. Yesterday.
Sneaking a dono in during stretch break. Happy Wednesday.
Lucas, I think that you have single-handedly, well, along with Biohaz, kept the channel going. And I don't know how to thank you enough. Well, thank you very much. I was too quick on the stretch break. Yeah, just, it really means a lot to me, and it really goes a long way on the channel. It's going to take us out to Nebraska. So the trip to Nebraska begins tomorrow morning. You've just joined the community recently, and you've helped a lot with links, with information, and so forth. So thank you. Yeah, just really thank you. Wow, holy shit. Yeah. Well, the trip to the greenhouse in the snow begins tomorrow. And then I think I'm going to be out on the West Coast for a while. I think I kind of want to tour a couple cannabis farms in Colorado. I want to see if I can, I don't know, I'm probably going to go to Lake Mead maybe once I get out. We'll see. But I imagine that I'm going to end up being on the road for a little while on this trip. Thank you. Holy hell. Kentucky's GOP congressional... Damn, thank you. Kentucky's GOP congressional delegation entered the redistricting cycle with an unusual request for their state legislative counterparts: leave Democratic Representative John Yarmouth alone. The group, which includes Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, wants the state's Republican supermajority to refrain from cracking the Louisville-based district into 3, even if it might deliver them control of all Kentucky's 6 House seats. It's been my experience in studying history that when you get real cute, you end up in a lawsuit and you lose it, and then the courts redraw the lines. So my advice would be keep Louisville blue. This kind of redistricting debate over how aggressively Republicans should try to eliminate the remaining Democratic enclaves in red states is playing out in cities across the Upper South and Midwest. Local Republicans, eager to grow their numbers in Congress and provide launching pads for ambitious state legislators, might be more inclined to carve up the blue pockets, but others in the GOP are wary of a rapid and unpredictable political realignment that complicates the drawing of maps and the threat of the legal behemoth Democrats have assembled to counter them. Unabashed partisan gerrymandering that was commonplace after 2010 is now giving some Republicans pause. Top party strategists are urging state map makers to play it safe and draw lines that can withstand demographic change throughout the decade in lawsuits. There's an old saying, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, and when it comes to redistricting, that is in fact the case. Republicans are also going to have to take steps to consider to take the knife to the seats of Jim Cooper, Democrat of Tennessee and Nashville, Sharice Davids, Democrat Kansas, and Emmanuel Cleaver, Democrat Missouri and Kansas City, on both sides of the border, and perhaps even freshman Representative Frank Mervyn in northwest Indiana, potentially on the chopping block the city of Omaha, the cracking of which could shore up Representative Don Beacon in one of the nation's swingiest seats. The decisions they make will shape the balance of power in Congress in the next 5 cycles, and because Nebraska splits the Electoral College votes by congressional district, changes there could even sway the 2024 and 2028 presidential contests. We got a hard lesson in North Carolina and Pennsylvania last time, referencing 2 states that had GOP-drawn maps invalidated mid-decade by state courts. The new lines netted Democrats several House seats. They stretched the rubber band too far. Not to mention, again, added Cole, who's the top Republican on the House Rules Committee, you get too greedy, then you have a bad election, and instead of losing a couple seats, you lose 4 or 5. The challenge there is 4 or 5 Republican incumbents would have to take 3 to 5% reduction in the Republican base, said James Harris. He said he has not sensed a desire from Jefferson City lawmakers to doom Cleaver. There's a scenario where you could have a year where you end up with a 5-3 makeup as opposed to a 6-2 map. Interesting that they're actually having conversations about knowing that they're going to get litigated against and not wanting to push it too far. If the Democrats had 1/10 of 1% of the political guile of the Conservative Party in the United States, we would be living in an entirely different country. But these are the times where I actually think the Democrat Party is just doing the bidding of the conservatives in the United States. They don't know how to use power politics. They don't know how to do anything over here. They really just don't. This is just a weird little short article that I came across my my news desk, but TikTok is taking the book industry by storm, and retailers are taking notice. Book Talk has sent old books back to the top of the bestsellers list. Videos with the Book Talk hashtag have been viewed 12.6 billion times. I'm going to just go through this one very quickly, but it's just an interesting development in the book world. It's on Book Talk. It's a community of users on TikTok who post videos reviewing and recommending books, which boomed in popularity. They've amassed 37 million views to date, many of which feature users reacting and often crying to the book's emotional ending. Wow. I keep hearing more and more people moving over to TikTok, and I've been venting about this thing for a couple times right now. I am so tired of only extroverts being able to succeed in 2021 society. I don't think that I am an actual extrovert. I think, what's the terminology for ambivert? A person whose personality has a balance of extrovert and introvert. It's exhausting to be out in the public all the time and like having to know that your tweeting is looking good, or if your Instagram looks good, or if you're on like the right social medias and so forth. Like it's impossible almost for people that have social anxiety to get ahead in the modern world at the moment right now, with how important social media and sharing your life and sharing everything has become. I really don't like it. Right, Gumbo Living? The performative nature of society is exhausting. I completely agree with that. I absolutely, completely agree with it. It's exhausting to me on Twitch. I guess I think that you would agree with me that I'm not very performative. I hope that I'm not to my community. But even seeing the performative nature of this platform exhausts me. Yeah, you said it much better than I said it. The performative nature of society is exhausting. Thank you for taking like my 5-minute rant into one sentence. Instead of just being exposed to the local extroverts, today you get exposed to the global community of extroverts. Yeah, it's exhausting. It really, truly is exhausting. I mean, I'm happy for these authors. And actually, Book Talk is probably one of the better aspects of TikTok. Like I'm completely I'm completely in favor, of this promoting authors. Overall, I mean, this is a pretty good story because it's not even the authors that are having to do it. It's other people that are reading their books and that are doing the book review for them. Well, thank you, Gumbo. BookTube is also a thing. This is just the TikTok incarnation of it. Well, I wonder, so like, are these Book Talk reviews like 1 minute long? Because doesn't TikTok have a 1 minute limit? So how are they doing like an actual full book review? Because I could understand BookTube. They have to be short. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could maybe do like a 5 or a 6-part TikTok. I don't know. I'm not really on TikTok. Young TikTokers are sharing their passion for books with millions. Oh, see you later, Nexi. Thanks for being here. They post short videos inspired by the books they love. Those that do best are fun, snappy takes on literature and the experience of reading. Well, I'm just too old. I'm a fucking boomer. Um, While this might sound like a reductive way to talk about books, the sisters know that these memes are an effective ruse to entice readers. It all comes down to the fact that when you see a book, you're like, no more homework, thank you very much. We showed them images with some really popular music, and it was a huge success. People loved it, and we've continued doing it. Yeah, I think I'm just salty. I get salty at people that do like this tiny little short form stuff, and it gets like so popular. I'm just being an old ornery bastard. There's something about the fact that it's under a minute. People who are consuming this content want stuff that's quicker and snappier all the time. You watch a 32-second video and someone's like, this book has LGBTQ romance, it's really heartbreaking, it's speculative fiction. And then the viewers think, oh, okay, those are all things I'm interested in, I'll go buy it. I'm too fucking old. Too fucking old. And I'm only 31. Holy shit. I know, right? Good for the book talkers. Good for you all. All right. Suez Canal says deal reached to free a seized vessel. I have to think about this one, or I have to even maybe think about getting on TikTok. Some hot take. Yeah, I know. Hot take me. Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, jealousy is a. There are a few flaws and traits that I'm still like working on deeply within myself. Um, I can I judge other people pretty quickly and pretty harshly, so I'm a pretty judgmental person. Um, I can get jealous pretty quickly, and that's something that I need to work on. I can upturn my nose at our species at times. That's something that I need to work on. Um, and I need to get a little better at being able to engage in small talk with people, or even just listen to what other people have to say. A lot of times, like, I'll realize I'm in a conversation with somebody in real life, and they're trying to tell me something that is cool to them, and I'm just like, what? And I need to understand that they're probably the same way with me. But, I mean, hey, I think that probably everybody in my community has improved themselves a little bit over, self-critique, as I have done also. It's a journey, not a destination. Is this for kids? To something to read the description or a review? I don't even know if it's that, but I think that's just what they're accustomed to. Okay, I think society has been boiled down into Instagram posts, Twitter posts, and TikTok viral videos. Okay, so the Suez Canal, Ever Given, is being freed. They're settling a financial dispute. So kind of just they're allowing the vessel to go free. Nothing too intense here. Kibi, what's Kibi? What's Kibi? QIBI. Bank of Japan is going to launch a new scheme for fighting climate change, keeps policies steady. So I think they're going to launch the climate change scheme by the end of the year, and they're going to release a preliminary outline at the next policy meeting in July. They're going to provide funds to financial institutions that increase loans and investments for activities aimed at combating climate change. Oh, hey, by the way, if anybody's looking for a cheap house, it was a video app of some variety that took a bunch of investor money then flopped. If anybody is looking to move somewhere for cheap, there are more than 8 million empty homes in rural Japan, and local governments... Oh, okay, one moment. I am kind of doing it this way because I'm in a library and I have to kind of keep my voice, I kind of have to keep my voice like a little bit quiet, so I did have it in like a differing position, but there we go. Yeah, I kind of just like can't scream down here. Yeah, if anybody's looking for a home in Japan, here you go. There's actually completely abandoned towns as well. 13.6% of Japan's 62.42 million homes are unoccupied. Wow. In Wakayama, Tokushima, Kagoshima, and Kochi, all of which had home vacancy rates of 18% or more. So they're trying to get people to move back into the rural communities. I would like to go. If I were able to get one of these places, I would go, for sure. While the details haven't been announced, they're going to be modeled after a similar program that offers cheap loans to financial institutions that boost lending in areas considered to be growth industries. Man, they're really, really trying to push forward the limits of what a central bank can do. LiDAR is the future of autonomous driving. This company is making it better. Innoviz believes it has the right strategy to win market share as fully autonomous cars get closer to reality. LiDAR, or laser-based, is key enabling technology for most automaker self-driving cars. It's good at identifying projects far down the road and determining speed. Unlike traditional cameras, the technology doesn't get blinded coming out of tunnels or in other tough driving conditions. The autonomous taxis that operate in Phoenix and Vegas are equipped with LiDARs in addition to cameras and traditional radars. Innoviz's operations are in Israel. Israel does a lot of advancement in these regions. I'm sorry, in these technologies and in software. Well, we actually have an article about Elon over here somewhere. This one. The auto industry is distancing itself from Tesla in response to new crash reporting rule. NHTSA is requiring reporting of crashes involving vehicles with driver assistance and autonomous capabilities. So we do have one kind of talking about Elon. He presented an example of the LiDAR unit installed in vehicles, which looks like a small black Kleenex box. The box itself contains 4 lasers and all the electronics needed to generate and process the data. They claim they're after the holy grail of a low-cost laser that can deliver the performance of more expensive, powerful, and complex LiDAR systems. They think that they've cracked the code by developing lasers using lower wavelength light, which can be cheaper but trickier to work with. There is some evidence that they're right. The industry is paying attention to Innoviz. The company works with 4 large Tier 1 auto suppliers, Magna International, Aptiv, Harman, which is owned by Samsung Electronic, and a Chinese supplier. They're hoping that they can get it down to $500 per car. I don't know, and I also do not know enough about Haitian politics or Caribbean politics or Global South politics to even cover the story. It would be irresponsible of me to try to like bumble my way through some things that I am just completely unfamiliar on. So you're going to have to traverse elsewhere to get the answers that you're looking for. Debunking Common Myths About Julian Assange from Richard Medhurst. This could get testy. So let's see how this goes. There are many misconceptions about Julian Assange's case. I'm Richard Medhurst, and I covered his extradition hearing in London, and I'm going to clear up some of these myths. The first is that Julian Assange is in jail because of the 2016 elections. It's completely false. The United States is charging Julian Assange over leaked documents about Iraq and Afghanistan wars, State Department cables, and files on Guantanamo Bay detainees. The indictment has nothing to do with the 2016 elections. The United States is charging him with 17 counts under the Espionage Act and 1 count under the conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. He's facing 175 years in prison and an indictment that seeks to effectively criminalize national security journalism. For the record, everybody, you can only be charged, or you're only supposed to be able to be charged with the Espionage Act in the United States if you're a United States citizen. People say that Assange committed treason. It's not only false, but ridiculous. He is an Australian citizen, not American. He didn't publish anything or carry out any work inside the United States. He doesn't owe the U.S. allegiance, nor did he break some NDA. The fact that the United States is trying to extradite an Australian man all the way from the United Kingdom to face 175 years in jail should scare anyone. What would you say if China or Russia were trying to extradite an American journalist to face jail time for something they published in another country? Bang on. Another myth is that Assange is not a journalist and therefore he has no right to publish any documents. It's patently false. First, he's definitely a journalist. He's accredited by the International Federation of Journalists and has done more journalistic work than most of his critics put together. And more importantly, the First Amendment in the United States doesn't care if you're a journalist or a teacher or a plumber. Everyone has the right to freedom of speech, whether they're a journalist or otherwise. People also think what Assange did is unprecedented. It's not. The New York Times published the Pentagon Papers, classified documents given to them by Daniel Ellsberg. Many people have and do this all the time. Asking sources to be careful or asking them for classified information is a standard journalistic practice. Out of the 18 charges against him, there is 1 hacking charge in the indictment. That is meant to portray Assange as something other than a journalist, to smear him and to criminalize anyone soliciting sensitive information or undertaking national security journalism. This charge has been completely debunked in court by several expert witnesses. Another myth you often hear is that the documents WikiLeaks published harmed the United States national security. This is a complete fabrication. The United States admits it themselves. The Pentagon set up an entire review board called the Information Review Task Force, headed by Brigadier General Robert Carr in 2013, to ascertain whether or not this was true, and found that no one had ever been harmed as a result of WikiLeaks publications. The United States government saying this. If you ever get your party, Sweller Raptor, to not completely deny climate change, maybe there will be some validity to listening to what people on your side of the aisle have to say. But until then, I don't really have any time for many conservative positions or ideologies or the people that support them. So thank you for your comment today. You're welcome to sit around and keep typing them as much as you want, but I vehemently and completely disagree with you. Yes, we are in the Kentucky Library. Hello, James. Astral Storm. Good to see you all. People think that if Assange has nothing to hide, he should just face the music and that he would receive a fair trial. That's not true. So when you're tried underneath the Espionage Act, you're not given the ability to try to explain your intent. In the United States court system, any other trial, intent matters. But under the Espionage Act, intent does not matter at all. This couldn't be further from the truth. Assange is already guaranteed not to receive a fair trial because the United States spied on him while he was in the Ecuadorian embassy. When he was forcibly removed from the embassy by London police, his personal belongings were handed over not to the British police but directly to the Americans. This violates the right to due process under the U.S. Constitution and the European Convention of Human Rights. UC Global, a Spanish firm that was contracted to do security for the Ecuadorian embassy in London, also spied on Assange by installing cameras throughout the embassy as well as secret microphones. They even spied on his conversations with his lawyer and had a plot in mind to kidnap and kill him. The testimony of several former employees corroborating this was presented in court. At the head of the firm, David Morales, is on trial in Spain. This is a gross breach of fundamental right to due process. In any other circumstances, a judge would throw this case out immediately, just as they did in the Ellsberg case when the United States government broke into his psychiatrist's offices. Also, more recently, one of the key witnesses in the indictment against him, a convicted criminal from Iceland named Siggy the Hacker, recently revealed that he completely fabricated his testimony against Assange in exchange for a deal from the United States. Yeah, did you all hear about this? Key witness in the Assange case admits to lies in the indictment. Admitted to fabricating key accusations in the indictment against the WikiLeaks founder. The witness, who has a documented history with sociopathy and has received several convictions for sexual abuse of minors and wide-ranging financial fraud, made the admission in a newly published interview in Stunden, where he also confessed of having continued his crime spree whilst working with the Department of Justice and the FBI and receiving promise of immunity from prosecution. Oh, they have the okay, well, the low-class Americans of the moment right now, Swallow Raptor, are having their air polluted, they're having their food polluted, they're having their water systems polluted, and so forth. So just because you try to institute a Green New Deal and you go after the fossil fuel industry that actually put forward all the pollution and all the ecological damage, does not have to result in the poor classes remaining dirt poor. It would actually be a new jobs program. It would actually be an opportunity to rebuild Appalachia. We need a public works project to clean up our soils. We need a public works project to clean up the riverways and the waters, to protect fisheries and so forth. So I also completely disregard your position of that it's going to harm the lower classes. If anything, all that's going to do is slightly rebalance the income inequality that already exists in the country. But we can keep going. I mean, I'll happily chat with you on Discord anytime you want to as well. I am on a different story at the moment, but we do cover a lot of climate issues here on the channel. The man in question, Sigurdur Ingi Thordarson, was recruited by United States authorities to build a case against Assange after misleading them to believe he was previously a close associate of his. In fact, he had volunteered on a limited basis to raise money for WikiLeaks in 2010, but was found to have used the opportunity to embezzle more than $50,000 from the organization. Julian Assange was visiting Thordarson's home in the country of Iceland around this time of work with the Icelandic media and members of parliament in preparing the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, a press freedom project that produced a parliamentary resolution supporting whistleblowers and investigative journalism. The court documents refer to Mr. Thordarson simply as teenager, a reference to his youthful appearance rather than true age. He's 28 years old, and Iceland as NATO country 1, but make no real effort to hide the identity of either. Do you just like going around off topic into channels and asking questions, T-Bird? And do you expect streamers to drop everything that they're going to do to acknowledge you? The aim of this addition to the indictment was apparently to shore up and support the conspiracy charge against Assange in relation to interactions with Chelsea Manning. Those occurred around the same time he resided in Iceland, and the authors of the indictment felt they could strengthen their case by alleging he was involved in illegal activity there as well. Thor Darson now admits to Stundin that Assange never asked him to hack or access phone recordings of MPs. His new claim is that he had in fact received some files from a third party who claimed to have recorded MPs and had offered to share them with Assange without ever having any idea what they actually contained. He claims he never checked the contents of the files, or even if they contained audio recordings as his third-party source suggested. He further admits the claim that Assange had instructed or asked him to access computers in order to find such recordings is false. Other misleading elements can be found in the indictment and later reflected in the magistrate's judgment. One is a reference to Icelandic bank documents. It's alleged that Mr. Assange and teenager filed a joint attempt to decrypt a file stolen from a NATO Country 1 bank. Thor Darson admits to Stundin that this actually refers to a well-publicized event in which an encrypted file was leaked from an Icelandic bank and assumed to contain information about defaulted loans provided by the Icelandic Landsbanki. No, I'm not being a passive-aggressive weirdo. You're just... Yeah, see you later. Thanks for coming in. Have a good day. The bank went under in the fall of 2008, along with almost all other financial institutions in Iceland, and plunged the country into a severe economic crisis. Just trying to see if there's any other parts where he walked back his statements here. Thor Darson's rogue acts were not limited to communications of that nature, as he also admits to Stundin that he set up avenues of communication with journalists and had media pay for lavish trips abroad where he misrepresented himself as an official representative of WikiLeaks. And to actually answer your fucking question, T-Bird III, yeah, he is still better just on climate policy alone, full stop, end of conversation. The Conservative Party of the United States is an actual death cult in everything that they denied about ecological damage and climate change. So I can actually just say from this one position, yes, he is better than Trump. We can actually get into debating the other things that you're talking about. I don't really care to do it right now. I'm not covering that at all. But there you go. You got your reaction and you got your answer. He also admits that he stole documents from WikiLeaks staff by copying their hard drives. Among those were documents from Renata Avia. Hello. He continued to step up his illicit activities in the summer of 2011 when he established communication with Sabu, the online moniker of Hector Javier Monsegur, a hacker and a member of the rather infamous LulzSec hacker group. In that effort, all indications are that Thor Darson was acting alone without any authorization, let alone urging from anyone inside WikiLeaks. What Thor Darson didn't know at the time was that the FBI had arrested... Spreadit's in Houston, I think. Sabu in the beginning of June 2011 and threatened him into becoming an informant and a collaborator for the FBI. Thus, when Thor Darson continued his previous pattern of requesting attacks on Icelandic interests, the FBI knew and saw an opportunity to implicate Assange. Later that month, a DDoS attack was performed against the websites of several government institutions. That deed was done under the watchful eyes of the FBI, who must have authorized the attack or even initiated it, as Sabu was at that point their man. What followed was an episode where it seemed obvious that Icelandic authorities were fooled into cooperation under false pretenses. Toward the end of August, Thordarson was being pursued by WikiLeaks staff who wished to locate the proceeds of online sales of WikiLeaks merchandise. It emerged Thordarson had instructed the funds to be sent to his private bank account by forging an email in the name of Julian Assange. He saw a way out, and on August 23rd he sent an email to the U.S. Embassy offering information in relation to a criminal investigation. He was replied to with a call and confirmed that he was offering to be an informant in the case against Assange. They were quick in responding, and within 48 hours, a private jet landed in Reykjavik with around 8 agents who quickly set up meetings with Thordarson and with people from the Icelandic state. We are talking about, this was one of the lead witnesses against Julian Assange and one of the big informants and cooperatives that worked with the FBI. But it actually came to find out that he manufactured a big majority of the testimony that was offered. And he's a convicted assaulter of minors. He's been convicted of other crimes and issues, so. Thordarson has been nicknamed Siggy the Hacker in Iceland. That's actually an antonym, as several sources Stundin has talked to claim that Thordarson's computer ability is menial. It's supported by several chat logs and documents where he's requesting assistance from others, doing rather uncomplicated computer jobs. He once even sought FBI expert help in uploading a video from his own phone. The meeting in Denmark was the first of a few where the FBI enthusiastically embraced the idea of cooperation with Thordarson. He says they wanted to know everything about WikiLeaks, including physical security of staff. They took material he had gathered, including data he'd stolen from WikiLeaks employees, and even planned to send him to England with a wire. So it's okay if somebody working for the FBI steals info, but it's not okay if somebody leaks info to a journalist and publishes it about damning things the FBI has done. Thordarson claimed in interviews he'd refused the particular request. It was probably because he was not welcomed anymore, as he knew WikiLeaks people had found out or were about to firmly establish that he had embezzled funds from the organization. After months of collaboration, the FBI seemed to have lost interest. At about the same time, charges were piling up against Thordarson with the Icelandic authorities for massive fraud, forgeries, and theft on the one hand, and for sexual violations against underage boys he'd tricked or forced into sexual acts on the other. Thordarson was sentenced in 2013 and 2014 and received relatively lenient sentences as the judge took into account that he changed his plea at court and pleaded guilty to all accounts. According to a psychiatric assessment presented to the court, Thordarson was diagnosed as a sociopath, incapable of remorse but still criminally culpable for his actions. He was assessed to be able to understand the basic difference between right and wrong. He just did not seem to care. Incarceration did not seem to have an attended effect of stopping him from continuing the life of crime. It actually took off and expanded in extent and scope in 2019 when the Trump-era DOJ decided to revisit him, giving him a formal status as witness in the prosecution against Assange and granting him immunity in return from any prosecution. Although the DOJ had spent extreme resources attempting to build a case against Assange during the Obama presidency, they decided against indicting him. The main concern was what was called the New York Times problem, namely that there was such a difficulty in distinguishing between WikiLeaks and publications and New York Times publications of the same material that going after one party would pose grave First Amendment concerns. Barr did not share those concerns, and neither did Trump-appointed Deputy Kellen S. Dwyer. Barr faced severe criticism for politicizing the DOJ on behalf of the president and got the ball rolling on the Assange case once again. In May of 2019, Thordarson was offered an immunity deal signed by Dwyer that granted him immunity from prosecution based on any information on wrongdoing they had on him. The deal, seen in writing by Stundin, also guarantees that the DOJ would not share any such information to other prosecutorial or other law enforcement agencies. That included Icelandic ones, meaning that the Americans will not share information on crimes he might have committed, threatening Icelandic security interests. And the Americans apparently had plenty of those, but over the years failed to share them with their Icelandic counterparts. According to information obtained by Stundin, the immunity deal between DOJ and Thordarson was presented at the headquarters of the Reykjavik police, where the only role of the Icelandic policeman was to confirm the identity of Thordarson before leaving him alone in the lawyer with the back room where he met the U.S. delegation. He started to fleece individuals and companies on a grander scale than ever, usually by either acquiring or forming legal entities. He then used to borrow merchandise, rent luxury cars, order large quantities of goods from wholesalers, also forged the name of his own lawyer on notices to the company house registry, falsely claiming to have raised the equity of two companies to over $800,000. The aim was to use these entities with solid financial positions on paper in a real estate venture. The lawyer has reported the forgery to the police, where other similar cases, along with multiple reports of theft and trickery, are now piling up. Okay, so there is one of your United States lead witnesses in the Julian Assange case, right there. I am going to run around the corner to get a cookie, if I can find. Okay, that's what I needed. I do have a video to put on for while I go this time. And then we're going to finish up the Julian Assange story. Who is, who's the YouTuber that I'm looking for? Actually, maybe I can do this. Filters this week. Okay, how many robots does it take to run a grocery store?
This is a grocery packing warehouse in the southeast of London. Folks have ordered their groceries online, and instead of people walking up and down,
Be right back.
this is a grocery packing warehouse in the southeast of London. Folks have ordered their groceries online, and instead of people walking up and down the aisles of a traditional grocery store to pick up items, these little devices move more than 1 million items every day between them. Instead of trying to build machines that fit into a world designed for humans, this entire facility, the size of 7 football fields, is custom built to make this as efficient as possible. I cannot get across on camera just how incredibly large this whole place is. The top speed of those boxes is about 14 kilometers an hour, and they pass within 5 millimeters of each other when they move. So, how many robots are there in the hive? Well, that depends on how you count them.
What you're looking at behind me is the hive. We've got the grid, which is the metal structure. It's filled with products. So that product is housed within what we call totes, or these open boxes that you can see at the top of the grid. We have around 2,300 bots, and they move the stock around the warehouse so that we can pair it up with customer orders to be delivered. The bots will move in the X and Y direction. They can also move in the Z direction. So we have a cable hoist system that means that they can lower down a gripper assembly and grab onto the stock that we have in the grid. In some areas we have as deep as 21 totes all in a line. We have sensors underneath the bot that mean that every time it passes over one of the squares on the grid, it has a laser underneath it that can tell when it moves over that cell. So it will say, I've passed a cell, I've passed a cell, I've passed a cell. We have around 58,000 different types of individual products within the grid. We'll use the huge amounts of data that we gather to understand what customers are most likely to order and place them in the easiest to reach locations for bots. All of that combined means that we can have stock into the warehouse and out again from our suppliers into a delivery van in just 5 hours.
The robots deliver their crates over to the packing area. Some of that packing is done by humans, but there are mechanical arms as well. One of the big problems they've got to solve is that grocery packaging is designed for people, and the interactions between all the objects they deal with can be complicated.
Currently we're standing underneath the grid structure that we saw earlier. The robots that we saw are actually dropping off products to the station. Once they're dropped off, they become in control of the robot, and the robot decides how to pick them before the grid robot picks up the tote and takes it away again. There's 2 3D cameras above the totes, so it takes an image of the storage box before it picks from it, decides on the best grasp point, confirm that the product is correct, and then place it into a customer shopping. And it's doing all of that on live customer orders. We make sure that we don't mix something that was heavy with something that's soft. There are things that the robot can't pack, things such as very, very heavy, very large, or very fragile items, but there's a lot of range in between that.
It's fairly safe to call each individual packing arm a robot. Each one has a separate controller, and it has to make a lot of decisions in real time using cameras and sensors on each individual arm. But here in the Hive, it's not quite as simple.
Controlling all of this is what we refer to as the hive mind, so this artificial intelligence system that controls everything. Once the stock comes in, from that exact point that it enters the system, the hive mind will track its every single movement. The hive mind will tell the bots exactly where they need to stop, but it is the bot's control system that allows it to follow a movement profile and stop exactly as the hive mind expects it to. There's just a 5mm gap between bots, so that's both as they pass each other and if they stop next to a bot as well. This bot with the orange light may have experienced something within its sensors and all of those readings it's taking, that when it feeds that back to the hive mind, it's not quite what the hive mind was expecting, so it just brings it to a safe stop for investigation. We do have a number of grid operators that sit at the edge of the grid, and they're able to use our CCTV system that we have above the grid to look at exactly what's going on with that bot, and they can try and fix that remotely and send commands to the bot wirelessly.
The boundary between individual and group.
So I saw Anna the Nugget watching this earlier today. So this is Okada. Okada grocery. Okado. Oh, it's Okado. But I kind of want to find out. I wanted to peek at this article. Ocado sales jumped 20% after shopping shifts online in COVID crisis. Retailer says new groups of customers have become used to online grocery buying in the pandemic. Retail revenues climbed to $1.2 billion in the 6 months to the 30th of May, and Ocado cut its half-year loss before tax to £23.6 million from £40.6 million. At the end of the period, it was serving 777,000 active customers. The average basket size was flat at 138 pounds. They opened 3 sites in the first half, including the first mini warehouse in Bristol, and the first warehouses in the United States for Kroger in Ohio and Florida. They plan to open 56 warehouses in the coming years, with 15 under construction outside the United Kingdom. My wonder is, how many people does this place actually employ? My guess is almost 0. There's no way they have 180,000 employees. I don't believe it. Okay, no. Yeah, that wasn't what they... Yeah, I don't like going down this road of everything completely automated and nobody has a job anywhere. So that's one that we're going to do. We're going to do a deep dive into Ocado at some point. Okay, to shift all the way back to Julian Assange. Yeah, but drivers aren't even going to be that big of employees because you can do... Certain roads are going to become autonomous roads moderately soon. Okay, to return to Julian. If anybody does like this type of content, we are an hour through the show. I did get an incredible $100 donation from Lucas, who snuck in a dono during a stretch break. Thank you, Lucas, for that today, and thank you, Biohaz, for the 125 yesterday. Damn, to you both. I really appreciate that. Hello, Cardboard Colon. A myth you often hear about is that Assange evaded justice. This is simply incorrect. Assange was given political asylum by Ecuador in 2012. It's his right under international law. The whole point of a political asylum is precisely because that someone is being represented or being persecuted by the law. Just because of the law doesn't mean it's fair. Most of what the Nazis did was technically lawful. Does that mean what they did was fair? Of course not. Assange's asylum was withdrawn after the pro-American president Moreno was elected. In exchange for expelling Assange, Ecuador received a $4.2 billion loan from the IMF. By the way, the company that does security for Moreno's daughter, UC Global, is the same company that did security for the Ecuadorian embassy in London and was contracted by the American intelligence to spy on Assange and all his visitors, such as dismantling the phone of Italian journalist Stefania Marizzi without her knowledge, or taking photographs of visitors' passports and documents behind their backs. All of which is confirmed. All of these things have been confirmed. Well, they can't... They didn't necessarily... You can't say that they were paid $4 billion to expel him. But you can say... Okay, so yeah, this isn't exactly the perfect frame. To keep it actually, I guess, completely accurate, one could say within short order of expelling Assange from the Ecuadorian embassy, Ecuador received a $4.2 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund. And then you could probably go through digging, saying they were trying to get the loan before, but were running into all kinds of blockades and problems. So that's a bit of a slanted way to write it. I don't exactly disagree with it. But I do know what happened to Stefania Marizzi is true. I think Pamela Anderson was spied on. I know they found cameras inside the Ecuadorian embassy. What they're saying about UC Global is true. In January 2020, and actually I have to check something on my back end here. I'm almost done here. Okay. In January of 2020, the judge overseeing the extradition, Judge Beratzer, ruled in favor of Assange and denied his extradition to the United States. She did this solely on health grounds, citing Assange's deteriorating mental and physical health, and the high risk of suicide that an extradition to the United States would pose given the inhumane conditions that he would be placed in. However, at the same time, she agreed with all the political charges. So while the result may be good for Assange, it's not good for journalists when a British judge is siding with and agreeing with the U.S. prosecution that standard journalistic practices are tantamount to espionage and hacking. Biden decided to appeal the decision and is seeking to extradite Assange, continuing Trump's work of attacking the press and criminalizing journalism. This is incredible when people think that Julian Assange worked with Trump or something. Trump is the one who unsealed the indictment against him, and Biden is now pursuing the extradition by appealing it. This is not just about the nature of the case, which is bad enough, but simply the number of illegalities, the sheer amount of things the British, American, Swedish governments have done to violate Julian Assange's rights. And right to due process is absolutely staggering. His rights have been violated under British common law, under U.S. law, under European Convention on Human Rights, the Convention Against Torture. There's no way you can look at this case and not find extraordinary foul play. Julian would almost certainly be put in administrative segregation, which is basically solitary confinement, and receive an unfair trial at the District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia, where the people on the jury work or have family and friends who work in the intelligence community and are certain to convict him and find him guilty out of spite. He'd then be sent to a prison such as ADX, Colorado, and placed in the most inhumane conditions for the rest of his life. The reason Assange is currently in jail facing 175 years in prison, the reason he's currently locked up in Belmarsh, is because he published evidence of war crimes. I covered his entire extradition hearing in September, which took place in the Old Bailey in London. Dozens of expert witnesses testified on Assange's behalf, including Noam Chomsky, Andy Worthington, countless other historians, journalists, doctors, writers, lawyers. They were all unequivocal. What is happening to Assange is unprecedented. It's an attack on the press and press freedoms. It is why all major human rights groups and journalistic organizations worldwide oppose and have condemned his extradition to the United States. Assange is the victim of a political witch hunt. The solicitation, gathering, and publishing of classified materials is something that journalists do all the time. They are standard journalistic practices. By threatening Assange, the United States is threatening journalists everywhere, no matter what nationality they have, where they come from, who they work for, or where they're residing. WikiLeaks published evidence of extraordinary crimes by the United States and their allies, including the murder of Iraqi civilians and journalists in the collateral murder video, evidence of kidnapping, rendition, torture, and much more. The Iraq war logs, the Afghan war diaries, Gitmo files, and State Department cables make up some of the most important journalistic works in modern history. Their publication helped torture victims of the CIA obtain compensation and the disclosure of more than 15,000 Iraqi casualties, previously unknown. 15,000 is more than 4 times the number of victims of 9/11. These publications give a real glimpse into what really happened on the ground and the reality that goes unreported in mainstream media. He's exposed the world to the true face of U.S. imperialism. Assange showed that the wars the United States is fighting under the name of democracy and freedom are failures and vehicles of suffering and death, and that is why he's facing 175 years in a U.S. federal supermax for telling the truth. Was there anybody in this channel that were not pro-Assange before and might be more pro-Assange now? Good, Paul. It's what I try to hope to do. This is an interesting one that I haven't been able to read yet. San Marino adopts a non-fungible token vaccine passport. Each passport takes the form of an NFT. The digital asset then incorporates the use of 2 QR codes to verify the asset owner's vaccination record in the VE chain blockchain ledger, allowing an immutable, secure, seamless proof of vaccination status. You've convinced me to look more into it. Nice. Good. The San Marino General Council passed the legislation on July 1. The certificates will be issued upon personal request in paper or digital format. Anyone can verify a certificate without the need to download a specific app. The use of VeChain blockchain tech, and in particular NFTs, makes it possible to increase confidence in the authenticity of the information, reducing the risk of counterfeiting. The certificate has a validity starting 2 weeks after the first vaccination dose or 9 months after completing the full vaccination schedule, with the smart solution enabling verification of so-called green passes for the Sammarinese traveling outside the Union. Agricultural energy demands are 5% of total energy demands of the world, highest sector being manufacturing of energy, followed by mining at 12. Manufacturing at 77. I guess manufacturing would count automobile production, cement production, and so forth. Well, it kind of goes to illustrate that we need to evaluate our manufacturing processes even more than the agricultural processes. So we need to get to lower energy intensive product creation solutions, and or, I mean, just fucking eliminate half of the industry that's out there. You know that I don't like toys, everybody. Well, I mean, okay, toys are fine. I get that people want their Tonka trucks and everything, but damn it, can't you have like a neighborhood Tonka truck toy fun thing or something? This is not surprising to me at all. I think that things like this are going to continue to push forward. And as I said to everybody, when the whole NFT boom happened, NFTs aren't about art. NFTs are mortgages. They're verifiable ways to prove certain things. They're car notes. They're property deeds. They're, yeah. So I think that we're going to move into a world where more and more things become a non-fungible token. That's immutable, secure, verifiable, provable. So this one does not exactly surprise me all that much. I don't even know if I want to go down the Afghanistan rabbit hole today. This could be an entire, this could be like an entire stream to talk about Afghanistan. Are we going to finally have a government ID that cannot be stolen? Well, I think it's possible. I mean, I for sure think it's possible because, like, we're not very far away from, like, 6 years from now, a person being born and their birth certificate is their NFT, their social security number is an NFT. So, no, I mean, I definitely think that we're moving closer and closer to it. Whether that's good or bad, I mean, I don't exactly have the answer, but the answer that I would give is it's going to happen. Is kind of my position. Oh yeah, I would Reficules. I'd be happy to. Thank you for the follow. We've watched Gaza Fights for Freedom on the channel 2 or 3 times. I've tried to give good coverage of the illegal settlements. I tried to give bad coverage of the Abraham Accords, which, you know, Netanyahu said that they were going to pause the settlements, and they paused them for like 9 days. We've tried to talk about how Palestinians aren't being offered vaccines. I've been in Israel twice. I've been in the West Bank once. So, yeah. DM me on Twitter, maybe? Or you can DM me on Twitch. But yeah, whenever you want to set it up, I'm currently on the road right now. I'm on a road trip across the country going to different farms to talk to farmers, make some short films, learn some agricultural techniques. But I would be happy to, at a minimum, put it together with me. At a maximum, maybe put it together once I kind of verify who you are to get you onto a larger show, if you so chose or wanted to do that. Oh yeah, the one thing that has always bothered me about people that say, "Oh, but China on pollution," I ask them, I'm like, "Where do you think U.S. goods are manufactured?" And they say, "Well, I don't know." And I say, "Well, do you think it might be China?" And then they say, "Well, it probably is China." And then I say, "Okay, well, where do you think those emissions are counted for?" And they say, "I don't know." And I say, "Well, do you think that they might be counted in China?" And they say, "Well, yeah, maybe they might be in China." And I say, "Okay, so wait a minute. So you're complaining about China producing your goods and polluting the industry, but you're externalizing the pollution balance on their balance sheet instead of on our balance sheet." And it's like, like, come on, come on, fuck. It's not even hard. Okay, once again, everybody, the stream is going to continue. Sorry, there's a little bit of noise in the background. Oh, you don't have to worry about showing your face. That's completely fine. I am going to be posting the one tab to all these different. Holy fuck, they're being loud. Okay, I'm going to be posting the one tab to all of these different stories that we have open today. We've got about 82. Oh, wow. Anna the Nugget rating with a party of 99. I actually just watched that video that you were on. Okay, this is an excellent time for a bunch of people to raid in. Hello, that is a huge raid. Nuggies raid. Wow, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Brad of Touring News. Sorry that there's a little bit of noise in the background at the moment. I am currently in the University of Kentucky Lexington Library. I'm on a road trip across the country going to different farms, different farmers markets, different no-till gardens, market gardens, hydroponics, aquaponics. Tomorrow I'm actually driving to Nebraska to go to the greenhouse in the snow, which is a design. It's a 98-foot by 17-foot greenhouse with geothermal piping down and out of it, 65 or 75 feet of piping that brings in 52-degree Fahrenheit air to grow citruses 365 days a year. I talk a lot about the intersections of macroeconomics, currencies, climate change, geopolitics, and I guess like the conflicts that would revolve around those. So today we've got around like 80 different tabs that are open. We maybe got through about 30 or 40 of them so far. We've been doing some deep dives on Julian Assange. We've been doing some deep dives on desalination technological advancements, which there's actually a really positive desal technological advancement at the moment. The current problem with, I'm going to call them Generation 1 desalination plants, is that for every 1 liter of clean water that you produce, you're producing 1.5 liters of brine water. Brine is just like heavily salinated water that has to be pumped back down into the ocean. And the reason that I'm trying to talk so fast is I'm sure that a lot of you are going to be bouncing out, so this is my one opportunity to make a good impression. So thank you for allowing me to talk fast. So there's a new... if you pump the brine water back down to the ocean, you're potentially destroying the bottom of the oceanic ecosystem and the ecological system that would be down there. So there is a newer technology that's being combined with photovoltaics, where they're using... A problem with solar energy at the moment is when solar panels get too hot, they lose some of their efficiency and their ability to produce electricity. So there's a company that is combining saltwater cooling and water evaporation technology inside of a solar panel. So as you use the liquid cooling and as it evaporates, you're cooling down your solar panel, you're getting more efficiency on your solar panel, you're getting your clean water, and then what you're being left over with is just all the salt afterwards. So this is actually like a hugely major technological advancement, both for solar energy generation and additionally for desalination, which is going to become really important. We talk a lot about vertical farming, a lot about hydroponics, a lot about automation, a lot about finance and treasuries and bonds and currencies and that kind of stuff. So thank you all for the follows. Welcome into the stream. Very wonderful of you, Anna, to give me a big raid. I really appreciate that. I hope you get some sleep. I saw that you didn't get to grab any sleep, maybe last night or two. Anna usually streams maybe 5, 6, 7 days a week, doing different news analysis, doing different React analysis and so forth, and it's just a good place to go and hang out. I think that I'm also a good place to go and hang out. If anybody has any questions, we can do like a quick AMA session on economics, on energy, on farming, on currencies. That's maybe some stuff that I have opinions about. So yeah, if anybody out there is a new viewer and you want to throw a question towards me somewhere, you're beyond welcome to. And hi, Anna. Thank you so much for the raid. I really do appreciate that. So what have we spoken about today? Well, actually, no. The salt can be used on table salt, cardboard golem. So you can actually, like, from that specific innovation, you can actually just use that for for consumption. Let me just put something up here that's like a decent thing to. Well, okay. You know what? I'm a big Julian Assange fan, so we're gonna put that there. Outside of desal, what other options do we have to increase potable water? Isn't it more salt than we could eat? Let me answer the potable water question first. Are there any other ways to increase potable water? I don't think I don't know of any at the moment. I know that Des Moines, Iowa is really dealing with the big problem of nitrate and phosphate runoff from the pig industry. So they're producing just horrible pollution inside of Iowa and Des Moines, and they're having to actually drill derricks in order to get clean drinking water into Des Moines. So that's kind of rough. Yeah, I don't exactly know that answer. Is it more salt than we can eat? I mean, even if that is the case, we can figure out something to do with the salt. Like you would theoretically be able to build like a big salt repository that wouldn't cost all that much carbon. So I would be the first one to argue that building a storage facility for, let's even call it like 80 million tons of salt, if you're providing the world with clean potable water, I can deal with that carbon trade-off. I don't know the exact numbers, but I would have to think that you're still doing better for the planet than you would have been without it. At the salt vault, there you go. You mentioned aquaponics. Is it similar to hydroponics? Aquaponics is utilizing fish, crawfish, shrimp, or potentially some other type of aquatic species in order to shit in a in a pool or something like that, and then you're using the nutrients from the excrement in order to fertilize your crops. So instead of having to bring in NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium from offsite, then you're able to just have like a regenerative, renewable, mostly closed loop system. A lot of aquaponic systems are maybe 95, 98% water efficient, and you can even design them in certain ways where if you have your fish tanks up above where you need to feed the water down into your floating bed system, then you don't even have to use a pump for that aspect. You only have to use one pump to get the water back up in. So you can kind of do like a gravity-assisted aquaponics system also. Can we create synthetic lakes of salt water and somehow chemically precipitate the salt out? No, not exactly, because like the amount of space that you would need to do that in, I guess you don't exactly know what downstream consequences would be from taking like even say that we find like an area that is just like an empty lake and we want to pump salt water into the lake. I don't really know what the downstream causes would be if that water begins to run off into other freshwater systems, or what it might do to the soil content down below it. So I would at the moment say no, but I mean also never say never. Better wastewater recycling? Yeah, I mean, okay, I guess you can take gray water. So like you could a lot of people we could begin to do better things with excess urine or so forth. There's probably ways inside of cities to do better gray water recycling or so forth. And I know that if you don't use certain soaps or so forth, there's earth homes, or woofadis or earth ships, whichever you want to call them. And a lot of those people are using the gray water from their shower and from their waste systems in order to fertilize like their crops out front. So I guess maybe gray water somewhere could do something. Reverse osmosis is what most... you're talking about that wicker basket thing, reficules? I've never seen if that wicker basket thing actually works. It's like the basket design that they're building in, I forget which nation within Africa. Damn, I can't even remember what the name of it is, but it kind of looks like, I think I know what you're talking about. Can somebody find a link for that? Or I think I know what you're talking about. Wicker basket to pull water from air. Maybe just basket. Yeah, the Warka water. This is what you're talking about. I've never seen like big updates on this. Okay, so it's the Warka Tower. I'm just going to put this on mute. We're not going to listen to... No, not this. It looks like... Oh, I know what you're talking about. There's an innovator in the United States that did it. Shit, he's from Texas. He's ex-military, I think, black gentleman. U.S. Shit, I know what you're talking about, Reficules. Fuck. Who... Okay. One thing at a time. My brain is pulled into like a lot of different places. I don't know how streamers manage a chat with like 400 different people in it. Oh, that's really cool. Steel lungs. You have a closed loop terrarium with spiders, pill bugs, and dandelions. That is absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for the raid today, Anna. What was I thought that he started from Texas. Texas man makes water from air. This is the one that you're talking about. I need to do more research on this one. But this is Moses West, right? Yeah. This is the guy. Okay.
A man who brought clean water to Flint, Michigan, now says he wants to help out in the Bahamas. Do you remember Moses?
Oh, no mod things are required. No, I'm just trying to make sure that I give everybody responses and answers.
He's the guy that designed this machine that can take moisture, condensation from the air, and turn it into drinking water. He's raising money, he says, to get this machine to the Bahamas. Now that's where Hurricane Dorian just decimated entire islands in that island string without power or running.
Okay, so the person's name is Moses West. I really don't know enough about this technology, but here is what you're all talking about. It's the hydrating technology that's taking moisture out of the air. It must just be like, I guess you're inductioning humid air, running it through some kind of condenser or some kind of system, and then like so your base. Is it just like a large scale dehumidifier, and then after dehumidification, you're using you're using the water? I'm not sure. When someone says climate change isn't real, what's the best response? Says Future Wolf. I have recently been going into talking about ecological damage to rivers and rising temperatures in oceans. So first, I kind of try to go to like we're having a problem with either overfishing or pollution causing mass fish die-offs in a lot of different water systems. In addition to water is able to heat up faster and hold that heat than air is going to. So where we're actually seeing like the greatest increase in temperatures is in streams, rivers, oceans, and seas. And when you go through a mass fish die-off, then you are going to have an increase in algae, and then when you have an algal bloom, that's going to lead to a fish die-off, and that's going to lead to less oxygenation of the water. So I try to talk about like damage that we're doing to rivers. I try to talk about the albedo effect, which would be as you have a glacier melt and retreat, and you're exposing the darker earth down underneath the ground. That's trapping in more heat because the glacier was reflecting heat. You know, white reflects more than like the dark soil underneath it would trap. Additionally, damn, there was one other one that I was going to have. Oh yeah, also, we've built a lot more heat sinks in the country. If you looked at an aerial map of the United States in 1960 versus an aerial map of the United States in 2020, based on the amount of city sprawl and the blacktop that's been built in the buildings and so forth, we are eliminating the natural heat sinks that used to exist in the country, and we're replacing them with materials that are just going to trap and condense more and more heat. I guess you could talk about like air conditioning units, how while they're making buildings cooler indoors, they're actually potentially increasing, temperatures up to 10, 12 degrees Fahrenheit outdoors, typically into poorer communities. Then you could actually begin to talk about chlorofluorocarbons. You could talk about PFAS contaminants. You could talk about soil erosion, soil degradation. You could talk about monoculture farming. You could talk about water table and aquifer depletion. You could talk about Lake Mead. Yeah, there's enough to do. I usually just try to like beat people down with such a preponderance of evidence and so many talking points that even if they can say like, okay, well, CO2 emissions aren't really a thing, I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about all these other ones. Like, what are your responses going to be to some of these? Yeah, good point. Unlimited hot dogs. There goes the idea using seawater for lithium. Apparently it's much lower concentration than the normal brine sources used for lithium mining. Oh, wait, do you have to use brine water for lithium? Because then potentially you could build a desalination plant next to your lithium mine. You could get clean, drinkable water for the local community and then use the brine water for doing the lithium. I didn't know brine was required for lithium mining, but if that's true, cardboard Golan, then you could probably combine those industries together. I'm gonna do some deep dives on this AWG unit for sure. The atmospheric water generators. Saw something about painting all roofs white. Yeah, I did see that. Oh, there was just a new thing actually that came out with like there was like a new material or something, right? New white material for buildings. I think I just saw about this too. If anybody can find it, I should have just, oh, wait, is this it? Ultra white paint could cool buildings, cutting the need for air conditioning. Scientists have developed a light reflecting ultra white paint, which they say negate the need for air conditioning and even reduce CO2 emissions if used on a mass scale. This is the one that you're talking about. Okay, we'll read through this once I catch up. There was a treaty signed in 1917 about not using weather modification weapons. Would you take it as a possibility that some countries using such things behind the cover of natural disasters add an effect to global warming, or is it far-fetched? Talking about energy-directed weapons that we can see publicly on a small scale, the possibility of large-scale... oh, God, I don't know. I know that there are... I mean, you can do... It's not exactly the hardest to modify weather or to create storms or to, seed clouds in order to try to, like, change, like, a drought or something, but I wouldn't go... I wouldn't go too... I haven't been deep down that rabbit hole. Sorry, I can't help you. Hello, Realithica. Let me say hi to everybody. Thank you all for the follows. If anybody wants to follow the channel here on Twitch, if you're a new viewer from Anna's, I really do appreciate follows. I like a follow or two on Twitter. I like subscriptions on YouTube. Those are all like really cool things that you can all do to help me out. I do like to think that my channel and our community take things pretty seriously. We're kind of like a research channel, I would say. maybe more than like a debate, or I mean, we're a political channel too, but we do read a lot of longer papers and longer articles. So thank you all for coming in. Thank you all for staying. Thank you, Anna, for the raid. Okay, so they're claiming that this painting is capable of reflecting 98.1% of sunlight and therefore has the ability to cool buildings. Okay, so my first thoughts about this are this would be amazing to use even on just parts of skyscraper buildings. Okay, so let's take like one skyscraper, right? Let's just take one, okay? So even if you're painting just part of the windows, even just painting parts of these windows, you're going to prevent a lot of the heat that's seeping into that building that requires the air conditioning. So even limited deployment of that paint would be pretty important, right? Well, no, when you desalinate seawater, you need massive evaporation pools because you don't have anywhere to put the brine. You think it would be blinding to the public walking about, assuming it's as reflective as they say? Burj Khalifa, I don't think that you're right about that. I think Burj Khalifa is one of the world's worst energy buildings that exists. I thought that I saw that it was actually one of the worst ones in the planet. But I could be wrong there. Yeah, I see what you mean about like reflecting heat. That could be a problem. I can see what you mean. The new formula absorbs far less sunlight and therefore heat. Yeah, I thought that it was. We'll come back to the Burj Khalifa. The barium sulfate particles are made up of varying sizes which scatter the sun's rays and even cool immediate surrounding surfaces. Regular paint will absorb 10 to 20% of sunlight. The new paint just takes on 1.9%, an amount small enough to allow the building to lose heat overall. If you were to use the paint to cover a roof of about 1,000 square feet, we estimate you could get a cooling power of 10 kilowatts, more powerful than the central air conditioners used by most houses. Yeah, I mean, this is a very good, yeah, it's a good innovation, I would have to say. There's no way that the Burj Khalifa is energy efficient. Oh, wow. Wait, okay. Now setting the standard when it comes to going green, I don't think that I believe anything about this. If it was built in 2009, I don't know how it could possibly be ecologically friendly. It's one of the greenest skyscrapers known to man. Really? Really? Solar panels all over the stunning building, which are used to heat a lot of water. The condensate from the air conditioning units is recycled and used to cool the potable water. Okay, I mean, I guess I was a little bit wrong on this one. I really didn't think the Burj Khalifa was that decent. I'll do more looking through it, but I'm surprised that an 11-year-old world's biggest skyscraper would have those kind of energy efficiencies. So I stand corrected. Well, I don't even. I think that we should have. I might even be in favor of having the Solar City energy. Yeah, but just because, I mean, look, the United States spends tons of money on fucking everything, and all that we do is drop MOABs on people. So just because money in doesn't mean input out. I'm kind of in favor of the Solar City shingles, where you're not even putting shingles on a roof. You're just putting solar panels directly onto the roof that represent what shingles were. But yeah, I'm also in favor of just painting these white fucking things too. What are shingles in this context? Here, I'll show you. Yeah, roof tiles. Yeah. So this is US style roofs. And then what you could do is, instead of putting any shingles on, you can just put these on, and they're replaceable. Instead of having like, yeah, Musk has the solar shingles, which sucks. But yeah, the whole concept would be, rather than going through the entire shingle process, you can just put these on there, and it mostly serves the same purpose. In addition, it gets you a solar roof. So you save the money on your shingle, you save the money on all of that aspect, and you're investing that money into your solar panels, because if you go this way, let's say that you do your shingle roof, right? Okay. So if you do your shingle roof and then you have to bolt on your solar panels on top of that, then you're having to install the shingle roof and you're having to install your solar panels. So why not cut out the shingles and skip ahead to or they're okay. The biggest problem is they have a bottleneck of installation, and they don't have a good supply chain. They don't have good customer service. They don't have good support. So the biggest problem is like scalability for them at the moment. But from what I've seen of the technology, it does appear to be an advancement that's going to be beneficial. So I like the technology. I don't like the deployment of it yet, but it seems to be okay. And again, one of the big okay parts about it is, if one tile goes bad, they're moderately easily replaceable. So instead of having to replace like your entire huge solar panel, you're only replacing like the 6-inch by 18-inch little tile. I did see that one. There are some cool innovations in bolting direct air capture systems on top of trains and using the kinetic electric recovery system in order to capture wasted heat generation from acceleration and deceleration in order to power the carbon capture and then liquefaction of the CO2 into usable fuels. Also, hey everybody, by the way, that's a newer viewer here. My community hears this all the time. I don't have a degree in any of this kind of stuff. So please make sure that you all fact check me on everything. I'm just a person who sits in front of a computer a lot and reads papers with people, but you gotta fact check me on all this kind of stuff. Okay, have I missed any questions before I maybe dive back into some of what the tabs were? Yeah, but that's the problem with good bullshitters. They sound like it. They sound like they know what they're doing. All right, I can save this article to read on my own. It was just about hybrid office working. We've talked a lot about almond farms, TLDR. That's an awkward question that I have no desire to discuss. Almonds swept California farms, then the water ran out, so there's a big problem with like trying to turn a desert into the biggest food production facility in the United States, and now California is dealing with the issues. Yeah, that's actually just gonna get you time out. You'll be back soon enough. Okay, I'm gonna skip the articles from the American Prospect. We read this one, we read that. We went through this, we went through that, we went through, what's this one? The Intelligencer. Techie, about Palantir, we talked about Palantir a good amount. /untimeout. Hello, Wojak. The other day, I don't know if you knew, but I was trying to talk to you, and I don't think that you had your chat on. So when you're doing your IRL streams in your garden, which your garden looks badass and awesome, by the way, just make sure you have your chat on. Here are 4 reasons the West is headed for a very drastic crisis, according to a veteran economist. I can read that one on my own. It's really just boring econ data. What the stock market's Black Swan index hitting an all-time high tells us. SIBO's skew index shows that disagreement among investors is particularly wide right now. Nothing too important for us to get into. Pfizer vaccine protection against infection declines to 64% in Israel. Israel said on Monday that Pfizer and BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine were still very effective in preventing serious illness, while also reporting a decrease in preventing infections and symptomatic illness. The observation coincided with the ending of social distancing and the spread of the new Delta variant. The vaccine effectiveness of preventing infection and symptomatic disease, they claim, fell to 64% since June 4th. The good news is that it's still 93% effective from preventing serious illness. The Delta variant is estimated to spread 40 to 60% more readily than the Alpha variant that dominated the United States by April, which itself was some 50% more transmissible than the original strain. I haven't been paying attention to the Delta variant, but now there's also a Lambda variant as well. So if any of you know anybody who is like well informed about these kind of things, I would like to get in touch with them or watch their streams, because I've fallen behind on paying attention with the variants and the strains and the vaccine rates and everything. It's just I don't like to talk about things that I could be wrong on if it's like dealing with vaccines and people's lives and so forth. So, whoops, sorry. Sun Valley's airport is so overrun with private jets arriving for summer camp for billionaires that the FAA had to delay incoming planes. Sun Valley, Idaho. Man, I wish I would have known. I would have tried to go crash their party, although Idaho is really far away from where I am right now. Tyson Foods, Steve Wynn, they're all going to be there. Okay, I'm going to stream for about 15 or 20 more minutes here, and then we're going to be putting a pin in the day. Actually, we've gotten pretty far. We're down to just one row of tabs to get through, so we might even be able to make it a good way through this. Wait, can I not? Oh, damn. I want to read this. The sea is changing so much. Climate change in the lives of Mumbai's fishermen. I mean, I guess we mostly know what the story is. More plastic, more pollution, more microplastics, hotter temperatures, more overfishing, less fish to catch, smaller fish to catch, more algal blooms. Would be, I would assume, the TLDR. Ohio makes it 6 states sending military and police to respond to the, and look at how they framed this, the Biden border crisis. They're going to send 185 members of the Army National Guard to the southern border, joining the ranks of Arkansas and South Dakota. Florida was the first state to send police officers from a dozen departments to help the counterparts in border states. Nebraska is sending 24 state troopers to Texas. Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota pledged up to 50 National Guard troops for a duration of 30 to 60 days. South Dakota deployment is being funded by a private donation. Republican mega donors Willis and Reba Johnson made an unspecified gift to the state through their foundation. Arkansas is sending 40 National Guard troops for 90 days, saying that the border states have requested help and we're answering the call. Our nation keeps bifurcating my nation, I live in the United States, we keep just bifurcating further and further. And I am beginning to lose my ability to predict what direction it's going to transcend down. A North Dakota rancher deals with burnt up pastures and low or empty water holes. Grass crunched under the boots. Temperature neared 90 degrees. None. Richie Tab, you know that I don't get into gossip all that much. North Dakota pasture and range conditions for the week ending Sunday were rated 33% very poor, 32% poor, 27% fair, 8% good. Stock water supplies are 38% very short, 36% short, 26% adequate. They're hoping that if they get to the 1st of August, they'll be lucky. Fair. We've been talking a lot for a while. They plan to sell 10 older cows in the next couple weeks to ease pressure on the feed supply. He's also going to have to sell some heifers that he wanted to keep and use as breeding stock. The drought, besides damaging pastures, has resulted in dry or nearly dry water holes. It's a tough year in the west of the United States. In some European news, a European Union strategy to boost forest protection has turned a simmering scientific debate into a full-blown firestorm, pitting one of the bloc's oldest industries against a perceived power grab by technology-driven regulators. 2/5 of Europe is covered by woodlands, which play a pivotal role in capturing and storing greenhouse gases. Trees are the foundation of a €640 billion industry that employs millions of workers who harvest timber. In a 19-page draft leaked by environmental groups this month, the European Commission wrote that it's preparing a new suite of high-tech surveillance measures and rules to protect European forces under increasing strain, while streamlining governance across all 27 member states. They want to expand woodlands by planting an additional 3 billion trees, even as it encourages more timber use to replace carbon-intensive concrete in construction. Interesting. Timber merchants wary of stronger restrictions have rallied to fight the proposal, they claim. For foresters, a decades-long succession of warmer winters and drier summers has weakened woodland resilience, exposing trees to wildfires and invasive species. Spruce beetles have wiped out millions of hectares, causing billions of euros in damages and forcing loggers to raise effective groves and replant new species of trees. They've been funneling billions into building out a constellation of Earth observation satellites managed by its Copernicus Climate Change Service. The massive volumes of freely available information they produced has kickstarted a burgeoning new industry of climate data startups that are angling to support the government and business decisions. They want to use more satellite surveillance technology to manage forests, have the potential to not only meet climate policy objectives, but also create sustainable innovation and economic opportunity. Okay, which stories didn't we get to today? How to pay for infrastructure, Mo Brooks on the January 6th event, research aims to examine compounding health effects of climate change, Agrify enters into a multi-year vertical farming research and development partnership with Curaleaf, the auto industry is distancing itself from Tesla in response to a new crash reporting rule, Chinese banks tell staff to recruit up to 300 new digital yuan users each, Shell prepares to raise shareholder payouts, Binance CEO says compliance is a journey as the world's largest crypto exchange faces growing crackdown. The NOAA updates its 30-year climate normals, and yeah, that tracks. The data is as unsurprising as it is wholly terrifying. Oh, jeez. Class action lawsuit against Binance targets their futures trading. AeroFarms talks research and development in the United Arab Emirates for vertical farming. Lumber is down a whopping 40%, but still at historic highs. A nanofiber membrane could help solve the drinking water crisis. We'll finish with this story. This will be the last one for the day. Chinese millennials are giving up the rat race to lie flat. Vertical farms nailed tiny salads and now they have to feed the world. Is the IMF repeating its mistakes from the global financial crisis? And there's I forget what this one was about. It was something about a Poconos farm is doing regenerative agriculture via hemp production and carbon sequestration. And they finally got they're the first organic approval or first organically stamped company, I think. Okay. Korean scientists claim a new desalination technique makes seawater fit to drink in minutes. They used a membrane distillation process that resulted in 99.9% salt rejection for 1 month. If commercialized, they say the solution could alleviate the drinking water crisis exacerbated by climate change. They use a nanofiber membrane as a salt filter. While scientists have used membrane distillation in the past, they kept encountering a massive obstacle that slowed the process. If the membrane became too wet or flooded, it couldn't reject the salt. It was a time-draining process that forced scientists to either wait for the membrane to dry or come up with additional solutions. The Korean team turned to a nanotechnology known as electrospinning to create their three-dimensional membrane. They used polyvinylidene fluoride co-hexafluoropropylene as the core and silica aerogel mixed with a low concentration of the polymer as the sheath to produce a composite membrane with a super hydrophobic circuit. Okay, I didn't understand that at all. In essence, thank you Theo Rex for the follow. Welcome to the news team. In essence, this created a filter that had a high surface roughness and lower thermal conductivity, allowing it to desalinate water for up to 30 days. The full report was published in the Journal of Membrane Science. The coaxial electrospun nanofiber membrane has strong potential for the treatment of seawater solutions without suffering from wetting issues and may be appropriate for real-scale membrane distillation applications. He added the membrane may be appropriate for pilot-scale and real-scale membrane distillation applications as well. Currently, the main method of purifying salt water is through reverse osmosis at the roughly 20,000 desalination plants around the world, but they require vast amounts of electricity and create concentrated brine as a waste product which is dumped back into the sea. Therefore, it's no wonder why they're looking for new solutions that are not as counterproductive. Okay, we're going to chat for our community for a little bit for the last 5 minutes of the stream here. I'm going to give some updates about why I'm going to Nevada. Yeah, Nebraska. Sorry. Jeez. Okay, so I am going to check out this farm. In very simple terms, this guy has a greenhouse in Nebraska. He uses piping to, thank you, Rio, to bring in cold air or hot air, depending on what season of the year that it is. And inside of his greenhouse, he's able to grow citruses 365 days a year. He's only using about $300 of electricity per year. He's growing grapes. He's growing pomegranates. He's growing lemons. He's growing limes. He's growing oranges, tangelos, and all different kinds of stuff. So beginning tomorrow, I am starting a drive from this. So this is going to be some of the distance that I got to travel. But we'll get there eventually. I imagine it'll probably take me maybe 3 days to make the drive. So I'm currently in Lexington, Kentucky, and I'm going to be driving to Alliance, Nebraska. So if anybody liked the channel today or wants to support it, for the future and all those kind of endeavors, my channel's been unaffiliated from Twitch for a very, very long time because I don't like the revenue split that Amazon takes from us. So I go through PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, that kind of stuff. Cash App, I think, is a hashtag touring news. I have a YouTube channel. I have some social medias and that kind of stuff too. Anybody with any questions, if you are a newer viewer, or any questions if you're an older viewer? I might. Oh, you want to? Oh, the so that shit. What's the? Okay, nice. Got your message, Reficules. 1 second here. I'll answer that question for you, Biohaz. This has been a decent fiction book, actually. So, Waste Tide. It's all about people who recycle materials at a Silicon Isle. Relatively easy non-fiction books. This is a good one. The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming by David Wallace Wells. Oh, yeah, I mean, well, it's not. It's all going to be heavy. And I was recommended from Clydeson to read... Facing the Anthropocene by Ian Angus. Fossil Capitalism and the Crisis of the Earth System. This was recommended to me by twitch.tv/Clydeson, the platform's best farmer. I'm probably going to come back later tonight and play some Sea of Thieves, because this is going to be